So we formed the band of Joy. John eventually came into that, and we were doing Jefferson Airplane stuff. She Has Funny Cars and all that sort of thing. Plastic Fantastic Lover, but nobody wanted to hear it, you know. So we'd do about 3 gigs a week. So the music wasn't really a saleable commodity, you know. So that was what it was all about, poverty. You know. After about 12 months of poverty, John started playing with Tim Rose on drums, and I eventually started doing a blues duet yet again, but with Alexis Corner. And Alexis never works on anything that's a permanent basis. It's always very temporary. You know, he's got these TV commercials that he must do, and then all of a sudden I had a telegram out of the blue saying Keith Relf had left the Yardbirds, and I didn't believe it, you know.
I met Jimmy when Robert and Jimmy came to see me playing in London one night, but it was only for a few minutes really, you know, and then they went. It was quite strange really, meeting sort of like John, Paul and Jimmy, you know, coming from where I'd come from, you know. I'd sort of been playing in local groups and as Robert said, that's why we all thought, you know, it was a bit of a joke getting sort of telegrams and things, you know, there's a chance of becoming one of the Yardbirds sort of thing. It was like a gift from heaven, wasn't it?
It doesn't mean we're not brilliant, you know. It doesn't mean we're not brilliant, it just means that like when you're up here, it's like the dark lands of the borders of Mordor, you know, really, because promoters and the whole music scene is set on a very strange level in this area, even now.
I was pretty shy, you know. I just sort of, you know, the best thing I had to do was to sort of, when you're in a situation like that, is not to say much and just to sort of soldier along and suss it all out, sort of thing, you know. And we had a good play that day, and it went quite well, you know. The playing was good, you know. Even the first time we played together, you know, there's a feeling, you know, when you're playing a group, whether it's going to be any good or whether it's not, you know. And it was good. It was very good indeed. But, you know, you could tell it was going to be a good group, you know, like, you know, not being sort of flash about it. But I am.
Yeah, played harmonica on a PJ Proby album. That's about as far as I got. Well, it's not really, I could sing backing for Lulu, I suppose, or something like that.
Page planned Jones and Bonham's first studio session experience as a group took place in the last week of August 1968. The material for PJ Proby's 3-week Hero was recorded at Olympic Sound Studios, with 95% of the string arrangements done by John Paul Jones. All 4 members didn't play on every track on the album, but you can spot the early Zeppelin sound here and there. It was the last number, a 7-minute blues medley, where they left their stamp and signal into the very near future. Is 3-Week Hero a classic record?
No!
Most numbers are forgettable, except for the medley. PJ Proby didn't write a single tune, but it's a historic release nevertheless.
Take it one more time.
Packed with precious Gerrard Street rehearsal time, the still Yardbirds took off from Heathrow Airport, London, for an almost 2-hour flight up to Copenhagen, Denmark. It was these Yardbirds lineup's first ever concert tour, Scandinavia 1968. Note, I will pronounce the name of most of the cities mentioned here based on their English phonetic equivalents. Some exceptions will be made where I'll try to use the actual Danish and Swedish pronunciation. These languages are tough. John Paul Jones played a brief stint on Hermann Hermitz's tour of Germany back in April 1968. Sponsored by Yardley perfume makers, it was a promotional tour of Europe. Jones was credited for arrangements for the band's 1968 release, Mrs. Brown, You've Got a Lovely Daughter. For Plant and Bonham, it was their first ever music trip outside of the UK. For Page, it was his second time around in Scandinavia, after a 13-day tour back in April 1967. Their third show on the 7th was professionally recorded and finally released in 2023 via Repertoire Records. So this means Jimmy was well known in Scandinavia, so the expectations to see the Yardbirds once again were high. Now you wonder what the conversations on the plane to Denmark were all about. Maybe Robert Plant talked about Big Brother and the holding company's album Cheap Thrills, featuring Janis Joplin on vocals, with their killer version of Piece of My Heart, to which Jumble Jones probably responded, "Oh yeah, I recorded that song with Dusty Springfield. Her album will come out sometime in November." As they approached Copenhagen, all the band could think of was the music, as their setlist was pulled from thin air, created on the run, and probably rehearsed on the plane with a guitar and improvised percussion. No time for much afterthought, but go out and play your heart out. There are many sources on the possible setlist for this tour. While it makes sense to guess many future Zeppelin numbers on it, most were developed from the Yardbirds blueprint out of necessity and urgency. Train Kept Rollin', Dazed and Confused, and White Summer were regular Yardbirds staples throughout the year. How many more times was a variation on previous sounds of Smokestack Lightning? Page wanted to try out Muddy Waters' version of You Shook Me, and Jeff Beck recorded his own version for Truth, released back in July. Now, the previous Yardbirds did a version called New York City Blues, where some parts of I Can't Quit You Baby can be traced back to. Albert Gantry's Flames has been rumored to appear on stage, and well, it was another July 1968 record that Page knew about. A John Bonham drum solo, Pat's Delight, named after his wife, makes sense for this tour to showcase his chops. The Yardbirds' own For Your Love is also a rumor, but it's not far-fetched to think they played this as the Scandinavian audience wanted actual songs from the previous lineup. For Your Love was not played back in 1967 though. This leaves us with two new songs, Communication Breakdown and Babe I'm Gonna Leave You, worked on from scratch. The latter was of course Page and Plant's partnership starting point. Playing Denmark in 1968 was a good place to start, and it was right in front of the municipality of Zeppelin, Germany, where the last name comes from. Denmark had seen a busy concert market that year, with Jimi Hendrix the biggest name to play the 1600 capacity venue, Tivoli Concert Hall, in January. The new Yardbirds couldn't fill that venue at the time, but they would play 2 nights in less than a year. Other groups at Tivoli for 1968 included Cream, John Mayall, 2 nights with Deep Purple, Traffic, and 2 nights with legend Bill Haley and his Comets. All the other rock and roll shows were held at smaller venues throughout the country. Fun fact, Deep Purple made its live debut in Denmark with 8 concerts. Both 10 years after, and the Pretty Things performed several dates in February. The Yardbirds manager Peter Grant worked with promoter company Bendix Music, who handled logistics and venue booking. Jerry Ritz was appointed as Scandinavian tour manager for the Yardbirds. Among his duties, well, driving to every gig
In a van down by the river.
No, not down the river, but a van down the road. The band's itinerary had 9 shows across Denmark and Sweden. Unfortunately, no bootleg audio recordings from this period have ever surfaced among collectors, so we can only imagine what the music sounded like. But according to people who were there, it was amazing. Now, some of these names were familiar to Peter Grant, as the Jeff Beck group played here back in April as a part of their own Scandinavian tour. Note, there are 3 Yardbirds states, including Norway, that remained unconfirmed to this day. Online forums and Zeppelin experts around the world are still trying to determine if these actually took place. So back to Denmark. The Yardbirds had 5 shows in 2 days. Yes, that's a hard-working band if you ask me. Concert income helped them get necessary funds to sustain their operation. It wasn't money for nothing and the chicks for free. It was money for everything. And maybe the chicks for free, who knows? September 7th, 1968. The Doors played London's Roundhouse that same day with opening act Jefferson Airplane. Jimi Hendrix performed at Pacific Coliseum, Vancouver, with opening acts Vanilla Fudge and Soft Machine. Also that day, the Yardbirds' first ever show at the Gladsaxe Teen Club, where they also rehearsed all afternoon. It was a good warm-up, but also they were still getting to know the setlist. Familiarity needs practice. Luckily, the chemistry was there from day one. The site was built in 1961 as the Egegard School for 800 students in response to the municipality of Gladsaxe's population growth around 1955. An influx of families moving into the suburbs was a catalyst for expansion and with it, youth culture. The need for entertainment and social activities led to the creation of a third place, somewhere you could hang out and have a great time, and if lucky, meet your potential wife and longtime partner. Hello School Gymnasium or the Gladsax Teen Club. A stage was built, soft drinks were sold, it was a music club by night. Ticket prices for events were cheap, around $1. By the time the Yardbirds were scheduled to perform on September 7th, there had been shows by 10 Years After, Deep Purple, and the Small Faces, where foreign bands played a 45-minute set after one or two Danish openers, to ensure the crowd kept on rocking, that and getting more soft drinks, candy and more soft drinks. Up to 40 volunteers kept the place running. Their pay was 2 sandwiches and you guessed it, 1 soft drink. Jimmy Page wore his white Yardbirds outfit that can be seen on the previous tour of North America. Danish audience members could also see his guitar with a different style. He changed the mirrors for a dragon-style paint job. Jones wore a classic-style jacket like the one we see in the song Remains the Same, and he paid close attention to the drums. Robert Plant had just turned 20 in August and wore what seems to be the same shirt John Bonham used on the January 1968 Band of Joy photo session. Talk about full circle, that's a lucky piece of wardrobe. The drums were not a Ludwig kit, as Bonzo didn't have an endorsement deal yet, but a 1960s Blue Singerland kit, played with all the bravado and passion a 20-year-old has. Reviews were positive, the music was loud, and while people saw a lineup change for these Yardbirds, they thought they sounded as good as a previous incarnation, if not better. Promotional materials for the show had been done quite in advance, so Keith Relf, Jim McCarty, and Chris Dreja were mentioned. Attendees must have been shocked to realize the band had changed a bit. The new Yardbirds then moved on for their 7:30 p.m. show at the Brøndby Pop Club near Copenhagen's airport, just a 15-minute drive from Gladsaxe. Concert poster for this gig featured an updated band photo. Reviews were again positive, especially the drum solo, but a critic did say this about Robert Plant, quote, "He doesn't have to twist his body like he's having a ruptured appendix, does he?" Brøndby Pop Club saw April 1968 visits by the Jeff Beck Group, Deep Purple, and 10 Years After. Sunday, September 8th. First of 3 shows took place at Revenlow Park in Lolland. The Yardbirds were advertised with one opening band to take the stage set up in between riding stables and gardens dating back to 1870. The park became the site for many events since the mid-60s, including Small Faces, The Pretty Things, and 10 Years After, all of them in 1968. A quick press photograph was shot with all 4 members in pixelated detail. One small article mentions the group will play 2 more gigs on the same day, so quote, "It will be a busy day." Second show took place in the city of Roskilde. That's a 90-minute drive from Lolland that the band had to endure. We can speculate how they managed to relax inside a van. Is that even possible? Fjordvilla was a famous location that nowadays hosts a gym built around 1978. The old venue was demolished back in March 1977 as Led Zeppelin got ready for their 11th visit to North America. Fjordvilla was built around 1850 as a private royalty residence, which became an important part of the city's skyline. It was turned into a restaurant at the start of the century. Then in 1936, major renovations were done to the building, leaving the old facade intact. The big hall was done in 1949 to host countless high-level events. By 1968, though, it was a popular venue for late-night activities, including a topless female group by the name of Ladybirds. Their stage show kept audience members as trains kept a-rollin' until they were dazed and confused. You can see them climbing a thick pole in this promo ad alongside the Yardbirds in fine print, as well as Fjordvilla's agenda, where Yardbirds are described as top pop show featuring Jimmy Page. It was a busy year at the venue with one of Jimmy's favorite bands, the Incredible String Band, in January, followed by 10 Years After and The Pretty Things in February. The Jeff Beck Group and Deep Purple followed in April. Fun fact, Page and Plant came back to Roskilde in June 1995. So an exhausted crew drove 30 minutes down to the city of Coge for show number 3 at Club Liverpool Pop Club. Proof of this visit comes from a press release, pretty much.
A 10-acre children's play center with a difference. Every building here is being made from tiny plastic bricks. The little plastic world is finished and open to the public. They call it Legoland.
The Yardbirds moved their tour up to Stockholm, Sweden. Like Denmark, Swedish crowds saw Jimi Hendrix reign supreme with 5 shows in January, followed by a long list of artists throughout the year. Pre-ABBA fame Frida, Eric Burdon and the Animals, Diana Ross and the Supremes, John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, The Nice, Fleetwood Mac, The Kinks at 20 shows in Sweden, and pretty much the same groups I talked about for Denmark. The Yardbirds arrived at Gröna Lund amusement park on September 12th. Press ads ran the very same day of the concert, and British band Traffic played there just a month before. Now this is an almost 8-hour drive from Coge, Denmark. So there's a possibility they took turns driving the van, or they took a 1 hour and 15-minute flight to Sweden. Because the Udesen Bridge was not built until 1995, they were probably forced to take a long ferry from Copenhagen to Malmö, Sweden, and then drive from there. We're looking at a 10-12 hour trip that sounds like hell. So my best guess is they took a flight to Stockholm, and this way the gear was kept safe and their sanity retained. Fun fact, Gröna Lund's amusement park was not that far away from where ABBA's Polar Studios was located. To think Sweden witnessed both stages of Zeppelin's career is mind-blowing. Next show was a September 13 date performed in close proximity at the Inside Club with a local progressive rock band by the name of Atlantic Ocean, plus folk singer Bern Staff, and a DJ playing the latest records. Next up was a 41-minute trip up to Knivsta for a September 14th Angry Park date. Advertisements ran the correct Yardbirds photo. Last show on the list was a 5.5 hour drive down to Gothenburg to yet another amusement park, this time Leisberg. A fun place for many rock and roll shows hosted since May 1968, with names like 10 Years After, The Nice, Fleetwood Mac, the Spencer Davis Group, and The Animals. Bill Haley and the Kinks arrived in June. There's one last concert day that seems to be the source of controversy. The deluxe edition box set for Led Zeppelin 1 shows a September 17th show at the Eye Candy Scenery of Folkets Park in Malmö, yet this shows up as cancelled in some online Zeppelin records. Whether this took place or not, it makes sense if it did, as they could catch a ferry back to Copenhagen from Malmö. From the municipality of Zeppelin in Germany point of view, it looked like a busy concert tour setting the foundations for what was coming.
The new aluminium pull-open top. Now all that's between you and your Coke is...
Back in England, The Who began recording sessions for Tommy on September 19th. The Yardbirds got busy with intense rehearsals conducted at Jimmy's Pineborn house on September 23rd and 24th. Their tour of Scandinavia was one big rehearsal as well, and provided valuable trial and error notes to further polish their material. What worked on stage was kept, what could be improved was explored. Among the new numbers was the band's version of Garnet Mimms' 1964 hit, As Long As I Have You. This funk soul classic took the rhythm section into locking in their groove. Elmer Gantry's Flames and the band's Chest Fever were also rehearsed, but none of these made their way into the studio. Guys, I know you wanted me to move on into the new Yardbirds recording their songs. We've been through a lot of information on Scandinavia, so I feel it's time to stop here and fully dedicate episode 3 to Olympic Studios and every track the band captured on tape, including a musical analysis of the chords, songwriting style, and much more. Stay tuned for the next installment and be sure to hit the like button, as this helps my videos gain more traction and grow this channel into the biggest rock and roll library on the platform. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.